My brother crushed my 9-year-old son's ribs with a baseball bat. He didn't just swing, he aimed. And while my son, Leo, was gasping for air on a sterile hospital gurney, my parents weren't praying for his recovery. They were busy drafting his silence. I was standing under the flickering fluorescent lights of the emergency room, the smell of antiseptic stinging my throat, when my phone buzzed in my palm. It was 11:51 p.m., a text from my mother, Michelle. "No. How is he?" "No. We're on our way." Just 6 words that felt like a surgical strike. Don't ruin Jeff's life over a misunderstanding. I stared at the screen until the light burned my retinas. In that moment, the family I thought I had, the one I had supported, financed, and protected for a decade simply ceased to exist. I didn't scream. I didn't break down. I just felt a terrifying, crystalline clarity. I realized that my compassion had been a luxury they'd been overdrafting for years, and tonight, the account was officially closed. Have you ever had to choose between your child's safety and your birth family's reputation? Let me know where you're watching from and if you've ever faced a betrayal like this. I'm reading every single one of your stories. Anger wasn't loud this time. It was clinical. I sat in the hospital waiting room, a space designed for patients, and realized I was done being patient. I pulled my laptop from my bag and opened a spreadsheet, the one I'd titled Family Expenses 5 years ago. I didn't see names on that screen. I saw liabilities. There was the $12,000 for my parents' property taxes that I'd quietly covered so they wouldn't lose the family estate. There was the $15,000 loan for Jeff's landscaping business, a business that mostly consisted of him buying a truck he couldn't drive and tools he never used. For a decade, I'd been the silent investor in their version of family. I'd been the architect, drawing up the blueprints for their comfort while I lived in the drafty margins of their gratitude. I rubbed my eyes, trying to summon a flicker of regret or a drop of filial guilt. There was only clarity. This wasn't a breakdown. It was an audit. I'd always been the stable one. In our family dynamic, my independence wasn't a source of pride for my parents. It was a resource to be mined. They looked at my architectural firm, my modest success, and my organized life, and they didn't see a daughter to be proud of. They saw a safety net for Jeff. This is the trap of the independent child. When you prove you can survive anything, your family decides you don't need anything, including protection or respect. They spend all their emotional and financial capital on the golden child who keeps failing, while you're expected to stay quiet, stay strong, and keep the lights on for everyone else. You become the foundation, meant to bear all the weight without ever being seen. I watched the processing circle spin on my banking app. It felt like a heartbeat. I navigated to the automated payments. Click. The mortgage payment for my parents' house. Cancelled. Click. The recurring transfer to Jeff's operating account. Terminated. Click. The family trust credit card that my mother used for her emergency shopping trips. Reported lost. I'd spent 38 years building their world. I spent exactly 12 minutes tearing it down. My phone vibrated again. Another text from Michelle. Jeff is devastated. He's crying. Claire. Think about what this stress will do to your father's heart. I didn't answer. I didn't even feel the sting of the guilt trip. I just went back to my spreadsheet. I started a new tab. I titled it, The Cost of Justice. Inside, my laptop glowed with a different kind of sunrise, the kind made of facts, numbers, and quiet retribution. They weren't shocked by what Jeff had done to Leo. They were about to be shocked that I had stopped playing along. It was supposed to be a celebration of 4 decades of life, but it ended with the destruction of a child's safety. We were at Oak Ridge Nature Preserve. The air smelled of charcoal and expensive bourbon, the kind I'd bought for my father, Randolph, because Jeff forgot his wallet again. I had spent the morning watching Leo's face light up as he saw it. The metallic blue Trailblazer bike. $1,000 of precision engineering. A reward for a year of straight A's, and a heart that was always too kind for this family. It's a bit much, don't you think? Jeff had said, leaning against a picnic table with a beer in his hand. He looked at the bike not with joy for his nephew, but with the narrow-eyed hunger of a man who calculates everyone else's net worth. Sammy's birthday is next month, Claire. He's stuck with a hand-me-down from the neighbor. Must be nice to have architect money to throw around. I ignored him. I'd been ignoring Jeff's bitterness since we were children. But 10 minutes later, the peace shattered. Sammy, Jeff's 10-year-old, tried to wrench the bike away from Leo. "My dad says you have to share," Sammy screamed. Leo held firm, his voice small but steady. "I will share later, Sammy. I just got it. I want to ride it first." Jeff didn't intervene with a lesson on patience. He didn't act like an uncle. He acted like a predator. He marched over, his face flushed with a cocktail of alcohol and lifetime entitlement. He grabbed a heavy souvenir baseball bat from the gift pile, a custom-engraved one my parents had bought for Jeff's business achievement, and he didn't swing at the bike. The sound is what haunts me. Not a crack, but a sickening, hollow thud. The sound of seasoned wood meeting a 9-year-old's ribcage. Leo didn't even scream at first. He just folded. The bike clattered to the pavement, the metallic blue paint scraping against the concrete. I was there in a second, my heart leaping into my throat, but Jeff was already backing away, his eyes darting toward our parents. "He was being a brat," Jeff shouted, his voice cracking with the practiced whine of a golden child who knows he's about to be shielded. "He tripped. He's exaggerating." I looked at my mother, Michelle. I expected horror. I expected her to call 911. Instead, she stepped in front of Jeff. She actually put her body between the attacker and the victim. "Claire, calm down," she whispered, her eyes cold and calculating. "He's breathing. Don't make a scene in front of the other guests. You know how Jeff gets when he's stressed. Leo probably just had the wind knocked out of him. It was just a correction." Randolph stood by the grill, his tongs still in his hand, looking at his broken grandson and then at his son. "It was an accident," he barked, as if saying it made it a legal fact. Leo tripped into the swing of the bat. "That's what happened, Claire. That's the story." They weren't looking at the blood blooming on Leo's shirt. They were looking at me, gauging if I would be difficult. They were more afraid of a police report than they were of their grandson's punctured lung. That was the moment I realized my family wasn't a support system. It was a crime scene. And I was the only one who wasn't an accomplice. By the time I left the hospital to meet Sarah and David Mercer, I had stopped being a sister. I was a forensic auditor of my own life. Sarah's office was high up, overlooking the city, all glass and sharp angles, the kind of environment where facts don't care about your feelings. I sat across from her and David, a private investigator whose face looked like it was carved out of granite. I didn't hand them a sob story. I handed them a file. "I want the business records for Jeff's landscaping firm, his personal bank statements, and every transaction involving the family trust for the last 36 months, I said. My voice was level, the same tone I used when telling a contractor their foundation was 2 inches off. "That's a lot of ground to cover," David noted, flipping through my notes. "What exactly am I looking for?" "I'm an architect, David," I replied. "I know when a structure is leaning because someone took a shortcut. Jeff's lifestyle doesn't match his income. My parents' emergency requests for money don't match their expenses. Follow the leaks." As they got to work, my phone became a graveyard of desperate manipulation. Jeff left a voicemail at 2 a.m, his voice thick with faux sincerity. "Claire, come on." It was a heated moment. "We're family. Don't be that person who lets a little medical bill destroy us. You're being so jealous and vindictive. It's ugly." Then came Michelle, my mother. "I'm disappointed in you, Claire. To call the police on your own brother, after everything we've done for you? You've always had a cold heart, but this is a new low. Your father is so ashamed he can't even look at your photo." I listened to them once, then saved the files as evidence. I didn't feel the old familiar pang of being the bad daughter. I felt a sense of clinical curiosity. This is the illusion of the golden child's success. In families like mine, the golden child isn't actually successful. They are a project funded by the silence and labor of the others. My parents didn't love Jeff more. They were addicted to the idea of him. By shielding him from every consequence, from the failed businesses to the assault on my son, they weren't protecting him. And when you stop feeding the monster, The enablers don't get mad at the monster. They get mad at you for hiding the food. 3 days later, David Mercer called me back. His voice was different, tighter. Claire, you were right about the leaks. But it's not just a leak. It's a flood. Your brother hasn't just been failing. He's been predatory. Tell me, I said, leaning back in my office chair. The sun was setting, casting long, sharp shadows across my blueprints. He's been siphoning the family trust, yes, David said. But he's also been using your parents' identities. He's opened lines of credit they don't know about. And Claire, there's a signature on a loan document for $200,000. A loan taken out against your parents' primary residence. And let me guess, I said, my heart rate not moving a single beat. It's not my father's signature. Not even close, David replied. I hung up the phone and looked out at the city skyline. This wasn't a family drama anymore. This was a criminal liquidation. I picked up my pen and crossed Jeff's name off my mental list. He wasn't a brother. He was a target. The human mind is a master of structural denial. We tell ourselves that family members are difficult or troubled because the alternative that they are predatory is a foundation too terrifying to stand on. But numbers don't have emotions. They don't have childhood memories. They only have truth. I met David Mercer in a dimly lit corner of a diner 3 miles from my office. He didn't say a word. He just pushed a manila folder across the laminate table. Inside was a copy of a notarized deed of trust for my parents' home in Oak Ridge. $200,000, David said, his voice barely a whisper over the clatter of silverware. Taken out 6 months ago. The lender is a high-interest private firm known for aggressive foreclosures. The loan is currently 3 months in arrears. I looked at the signature at the bottom. Randolph Parker. To anyone else, it looked like my father's shaky, cursive script. But I'm an architect. I spend my life analyzing line weights and pressure points. My father has a distinctive hitch in his R, a tremor he's had since his stroke 3 years ago. This signature was too smooth. Too fluid. It was the signature of a man who had practiced a lie until it looked like the truth. Jeff, I said. It wasn't a question. Jeff? David confirmed. He used a mobile notary he's friends with. Your parents have no idea their roof doesn't belong to them anymore. If this isn't paid in 30 days, the firm initiates a forced sale. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't heartbreak. It was the feeling of a final piece of a puzzle clicking into place. Jeff hadn't just broken my son's ribs. He was systematically picking the bones of our parents' future. He was a parasite that had finally outgrown its host. I realized then that I wasn't just seeking justice for Leo anymore. I was performing a necessary amputation. My parents were currently sitting in that house, likely drinking the tea I'd paid for, defending the man who had effectively made them homeless. I didn't call them to warn them. I didn't send a frantic text. Instead, I called Sarah. The forgery evidence is solid? I asked. Irrefutable, Sarah replied. We have the IP address from the digital application and a statement from the notary who's looking to cut a deal to avoid prison. Good, I said, watching a rainstorm begin to blur the window of the diner. File the criminal complaint for the assault on Leo first. Let the police arrest Jeff for the violence. We'll keep the forgery as the finisher for the courtroom. I want them to see him fall in stages. And your parents, Claire? Sarah asked softly. They're going to lose everything when this goes public. They already lost everything the moment they chose Jeff's lies over Leo's life, I replied. They just haven't received the invoice yet. I walked out into the rain, feeling lighter than I had in years. This wasn't revenge, it was accounting. And the debt was finally being called in. The courtroom didn't feel like a place of healing. It felt like a site of demolition. I sat on the wooden bench, my back a straight line of architectural precision, watching my brother Jeff sit at the defense table. He didn't look like the golden child anymore. Without my mother's curated wardrobe or my father's quiet backing, he looked small, gray. Like a structure built on sand that had finally met the tide. When it was Leo's turn to speak via video link from the side room, the room went silent. His voice, small but steady, filled the chamber. I didn't want the bike to be shared, he said, because it was the first thing that was just mine. Uncle Jeff didn't hit me because I was bad. He hit me because he could. I looked at my parents. Michelle was sobbing into a lace handkerchief not for Leo's pain, but for the shame of being in a public court. Randolph stared at his shoes. Even then, they couldn't look at the truth. The judge, Sandra Ortiz, didn't mince words. This wasn't a family dispute, she said, her eyes fixed on Jeff. This was a cowardly assault on a child by a man who has been shielded from reality for too long. You are sentenced to 10 years in state prison. The scream that left my mother's throat was the first scream in panic I'd anticipated. It was loud, ugly, and full of the realization that her shield was gone. In the hallway after the hearing, they cornered me. Michelle's face was a mask of ruined makeup and fury. Are you happy now, Claire? Your brother is going to prison because you couldn't just let it go. And now we got a notice. The bank is saying the house is in foreclosure. They say there's a loan for $200,000 we never signed for. Randolph gripped my arm, his hand shaking. Claire, you have to help us. Talk to the bank. Pay the arrears. You have the money. We're your parents. I didn't pull away. I didn't raise my voice. I just reached into my bag and handed them a final manila envelope. I won't be paying the mortgage, I said, and I won't be talking to the bank. Inside that envelope is the evidence David Mercer found. It's the forensic proof that Jeff forged your signature for that loan. He didn't just break Leo's ribs, Dad. He stole your home to pay off gambling debts. Michelle grabbed the papers, her eyes darting over the handwriting comparisons. No, Jeff wouldn't. He was just stressed. The evidence is already with the district attorney's office, I interrupted. They'll be adding identity theft and grand larceny to his charges. As for the house, I suggest you find a good lawyer, but don't look at me. I'm not the architect of this disaster. I'm just the person who stopped holding up the walls. I turned and walked toward the exit. Behind me, I heard my father finally call out my name, but it sounded like a ghost from a house that had already collapsed. I didn't look back. I had a son to take home. 6 months later, the silence in my home doesn't feel like a void. It feels like a clean slate. I sat on the porch of our new townhouse, watching the morning sun hit the pavement. The neighborhood smelled of fresh-cut grass and rain, a soft, healing scent that had nothing to do with charcoal or charcoal-hearted people. Down the driveway, Leo was pedaling his new bike. He moved with a slight stiffness in his side, a permanent reminder of the price we paid for our freedom, but his smile was untethered. He wasn't looking over his shoulder anymore. I opened my laptop and pulled up the final legal settlement. The Oak Ridge house had been sold. After the predatory loans were cleared, there was nothing left for my parents. They are living in a small apartment now, funded by the meager Social Security checks they spent a lifetime trying to avoid relying on. They still call me sometimes. I see their names flash on the screen and I feel nothing. No spike in heart rate, no urge to rescue, just the calm recognition of a closed file. People ask me how I could do it. How I could stand in that courtroom and watch my brother be led away in chains. How I could let my parents lose the roof over their heads. The truth is, I didn't do those things to them. I simply stopped preventing them from doing those things to themselves. This is the hard truth of letting go of blood ties. We are taught that family is an absolute, a bond that justifies any amount of suffering. But biology is not a contract for abuse. Sometimes, the most heroic thing you can do is realize that you cannot fix a foundation that was designed to collapse. Walking away isn't an act of hatred. It's an act of self-preservation. It's the moment you decide that the stable one deserves to be happy too. My compassion wasn't a bottomless well, and I finally realized I had been pouring it into a sieve. By cutting those ties, I didn't just save myself, I saved the next generation. Leo will grow up knowing that family is a word earned through respect and safety, not a debt owed to people who happen to share your DNA. I looked at my spreadsheet one last time. I created a final entry under the assets column. I didn't type a number. I just typed one word: peace. Then, I hit delete on the entire folder. I closed the laptop and walked down the driveway to join my son. The air was clear, the structure was sound, and for the first time in 38 years, I wasn't an architect for anyone else's world. I was finally home.